Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for being with us today. I'm Eric Hammond. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And today on Firstpost America, it's more U.S. strikes on the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen, as well as more details about President Donald Trump's phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. We've got the latest on those and other stories from the United States and around the world. But first, we get you caught up on today's headlines. President Donald Trump gives Iran 2 months to agree to a nuclear deal. Tehran's nuclear program has significantly advanced closer to nuclear weapons after President Donald Trump withdrew from the first deal in 2018. American and South Korean troops hold joint drills involving tanks and attack helicopters a few miles away from the North Korean border. Pyongyang calls the drills rehearsal for war. Rwanda-backed M23 rebels capture another town and push further into the eastern parts of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This as Qatar mediates a truce between the two warring sides. China executes 4 Canadian citizens on drug-related crimes, raising tensions between Beijing and Ottawa. Canada says China rejected repeated calls for clemency for the accused. And hundreds protest against the government in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. The demonstrators demand better protection against violent gangs that control over 90% of the Haitian capital. We begin at the White House, where President Donald Trump spoke to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during an hour-long phone call on Wednesday. The White House revealed that the commander-in-chief proposed that the U.S. take ownership of Ukrainian power plants to ensure their protection and efficient operation.
President Trump also discussed Ukraine's electrical supply and nuclear power plants. He said that the United States could be very helpful in running those plants with its electricity and utility expertise. American ownership of those plants would be the best protection for that infrastructure and support for Ukrainian energy infrastructure.
President Zelensky, while acknowledging the proposal primarily focused on military aid, however, he requested additional Patriot missile defense systems to counter Russian attacks. Now, in response to President Zelensky's concerns, President Trump agreed to help relocate these systems from Europe to Ukraine. The two leaders also arranged for their technical teams to meet in Saudi Arabia in the coming days to work on the specifics of a partial ceasefire.
Believe it was substantive. Over the recent period, this is probably the most substantive conversation. The mood was right, sufficiently detailed. We discussed our next steps, the demands for partial ceasefire. I don't know what our partners will confirm, but we will prepare for this meeting in Saudi Arabia. As for additional demands from the U.S., I told you, no.
Now, the conversation with President Zelensky follows President Trump's longer phone call with Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. During that discussion, the Russian leader agreed to halt attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. However, Moscow refused to accept a full 30-day ceasefire. Meanwhile, Ukraine has confirmed that Russia launched over 150 drones overnight, striking civilian areas and key infrastructure, raising doubts about the credibility of Moscow's commitments.
We are skeptical when it comes to trusting the Russians. There is no trust to Putin. That's why I am saying we need to understand how it will work technically so that it will not depend on their desire only. That is it.
Meanwhile, both Russia and Ukraine have engaged in a prisoner exchange, with each country releasing 175 soldiers. Russia also freed 22 wounded Ukrainian troops in what it called a goodwill gesture.
Слава Україні! Слава Україні!
We are home, happy, in our native Ukraine, on our land. We have gone through a very difficult path. I hope that all the guys will return home soon.
As Donald Trump attempts to try to find a way toward peace, the world watches closely. With more negotiations ahead, will the commander-in-chief's diplomatic push lead to a lasting ceasefire, or will tensions continue to rise? And staying at the White House, President Donald Trump has continued his hardline stance on Canada. On Tuesday, the commander-in-chief lashed out at America's northern neighbor, calling it one of the nastiest countries to deal with amid escalating trade tensions. Speaking to Fox News, the president was asked why he appeared tougher on Canada than on larger adversaries, to which he responded bluntly, and I quote, "Only because it meant to be our 51st state."
One of the nastiest countries to deal with is Canada. The people that, now this was Trudeau, the people that good old Justin, I call him Governor Trudeau, his people were nasty. And they weren't telling the truth. They never told the truth.
President Trump also took a swipe at Pierre Poilievre, leader of Canada's opposition Conservative Party, making it clear that he's not a fan. Poilievre has also been a vocal critic of Trump's policies and has distanced himself from the American president.
Conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal.
The remarks by President Trump added to his litany of controversial comments about Canada. However, the statements were swiftly dismissed by the Canadian government. In fact, last week, after the new Prime Minister Mark Carney was sworn in, he declared Canada will never be absorbed into the United States and rejected President Trump's annexation threats. Rather, Prime Minister Carney signaled a willingness to redefine the partnership between the two nations, emphasizing the need for mutual respect.
We will never, ever, in any way, shape, or form, be part of the United States. America is not Canada. Look at the ceremony we just had. You could not have had that ceremony. You would not have that ceremony in America. Look at the cabinet behind me. You would not have that cabinet in America. You do not have that cabinet in America. We are a very fundamentally different country. I look forward to speaking with President Trump, just to be clear. We respect the United States. We respect President Trump. President Trump has put some very important issues at the top of his agenda. We understand his agenda. We understand the importance of addressing the scourge of fentanyl, which is a challenge here in Canada as well as the United States.
The trade war between the United States and Canada has placed significant strain on their historically strong relations. With tariffs in place, businesses in both countries are feeling the heat as nationalistic sentiment rises on both sides of the border. As President Trump continues his confrontational approach, the question remains, where exactly is the off-ramp for the once close allies? And now to the southern border, which is moving from a political battleground to a defense posture. The Trump administration is reportedly considering a military-controlled buffer zone along the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, this could put active duty troops in direct contact with illegal migrants, raising major legal questions. But will this be considered legal, and what will it mean for immigration enforcement? Here's the story with more.
President Donald Trump is deciding to crack down harder on illegal immigration. And this time, he wants the U.S. military to come in guns blazing. His administration is reportedly considering an unprecedented move. So what exactly is the plan? A militarized buffer zone along the U.S.-Mexico border that would give active duty American troops authority to detain illegal migrants. The proposal would reportedly establish a 60-foot deep military-controlled strip stretching from Texas to California. The buffer zone would be located within the Roosevelt Reservation, a federal land designated for border security back in 1907 by then-President Theodore Roosevelt. Typically overseen by the Department of the Interior, pieces of the land have been transferred to the Pentagon before. So what exactly would troops do under this plan? They wouldn't handle deportations, but they would be the first line of defense. Their job would be to detain migrants until Border Patrol or the law enforcement arrives. This is part of Trump's hardline immigration agenda, a signature issue of his re-election campaign. On his first day back in office, he declared a national emergency at the border. His administration then deployed 1,500 additional troops, bringing the total to 4,000 active duty personnel alongside 2,500 reservists.
Since taking office, my administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history, and we quickly achieved the lowest numbers of illegal border crossers ever recorded. Thank you.
And now, the military's role at the border is growing. Reports suggest the total number of US troops involved in border security operations is now around 10,000. If implemented, this buffer zone plan would mark a major escalation in the military's role. Until now, soldiers had been barred from most civilian law enforcement missions. Reports also suggest Pentagon officials are scrambling to find legal loopholes. They want to treat the buffer zone like a restricted military base where migrants would be classified as trespassers on federal property. And it's not just on land. The US Navy is also stepping up its role in border security. A second guided missile destroyer is set to patrol waters off the US-Mexico coast following the recent deployment of USS Gravely. This is a clear sign that Trump is militarizing border enforcement like never before. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is defending the move, calling border security a national priority.
The Defense Department has assets that we can bring to bear. Not just troops, not just surveillance, not just equipment, but actual planning and capabilities that enhance what Border Patrol is already doing.
This isn't the first time Trump has sought military involvement at the border. In 2018, he ordered troops to assist Border Patrol agents, but the plan was reportedly never fully executed. So this raises the question, will this new buffer zone actually happen? Border crossings are at a low, but legal challenges are stacking up. Can the Trump administration pull this off, or will the courts shut it down even before it starts?
And now shifting focus to the Middle East, with an aim to eliminate the military capabilities of Yemenis Houthis, the United States for the fifth consecutive day struck what it said were sites belonging to the Iran-backed rebel group. The U.S. military released a video showing Houthi attacked drones being shot down over an unidentified location. American fighter jets were seen taking off from the U.S. Navy's Harry S. Truman, the same aircraft carrier which the Houthis claim to have struck at least 4 times in recent days. American jets also struck targets in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a, where several people were reported injured. The nighttime footage also showed flames and smoke rising up after a strike on what is believed to have been the residences of Houthi weapons experts. Apart from Sana'a, the latest strikes also hit targets in Yemen's Al-Baida province, which is known to have military sites and weapons warehouses owned by the Houthis. The bombing campaign also targeted the Houthi stronghold of Sada in the country's northwest. Now, in response, the Iran-backed Houthi said they were countering the American attacks.
For the 5th day in a row, our armed forces continue to effectively and responsibly confront the American aggression against Yemen, the land of faith and wisdom, which has targeted civilian objects and facilities in the capital, Sana'a, and several other governorates over the past few hours.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump has again threatened Iran against arming the Houthi rebels. The commander-in-chief also warned that from here on, any escalation will get progressively worse for the Houthis and that the United States will completely annihilate the Iran-backed group. The Trump administration has vowed to continue strikes until the Houthis cease attacks in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, which are major shipping routes for global trade.
While we won't talk about it publicly, just know that there is a design to the operation. There are specific effects that we're trying to achieve, and there are specific targets that have been selected and approaches that we're taking in order to achieve the president's end state. So it isn't that we're just striking capabilities. There's an intent behind every strike and every target that we go after.
Meanwhile, the Houthis maintain they will continue to attack ships in the Red Sea in solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza, where Israel has resumed attacks after Hamas refused to release the remaining hostages. With strikes on the Houthis and Israel's war on Hamas, the Middle East continues to be on a knife's edge. And today we end in Europe. Hungary is witnessing massive protests after Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government passed a sweeping new law banning all LGBTQ+ pride marches. The law is being seen as the most damaging crackdown on LGBTQ+ rights in Hungary. Now, while Orban claims the law will quote-unquote protect children from woke ideology, his critics are calling it a systematic attack on the rights of Hungary's gender minorities. Our final story has all the details.
Hungary, a country once known for its vibrant pride marches, is now at the center of a human rights storm. Earlier this week, within a day of introduction, Hungary's parliament passed a controversial law that bans LGBTQ+ pride events, calling them harmful to children. The passage of the bill sparked chaos inside the Hungarian parliament, where opposition lawmakers set off smoke bombs and threw leaflets during the vote. Amid chaos and uproar, the bill was passed with a 136 to 27 majority. Pride marches have taken place in Hungary for 3 decades. But under this new law, any event that violates a 2021 ban on LGBTQ+ content for minors is now illegal. The violators will be fined up to $500. Police will also use facial recognition to identify offenders.
What is happening in the country is worrisome. They are trying to take away more and more from the Hungarian people what is actually ours and our rights.
Hungary's latest crackdown on LGBTQ+ rights has drawn alarming parallels to the suppression of LGBTQ+ freedoms in Russia. Evgeny Belyakov, a Russian living in Hungary, believes that in restricting LGBTQ+ freedoms, Prime Minister Viktor Orban is simply following his Russian ally, President Vladimir Putin.
It's quite terrifying, to be honest, because we had the same in Russia. It was building up step by step, and this is what I feel like this is what's going on here. I'm not surprised that Viktor Orban doesn't have any original ideas. He only copying Putin or Trump, but it's really terrifying. I just only hope that there will be more resistance like this in Hungary, because in Russia we didn't resist on time, and now it's too late.
Orban's party was instrumental in getting the new ban passed, and the Hungarian Prime Minister has vowed to protect his country's children from what he calls its woke ideology. A tone which is similar to Orban's closest ally in the West, US President Donald Trump. Trump and Orban call themselves the crusaders against woke ideology, and they are both cracking down on rights of the LGBTQ+ community. At the same time, human rights groups have called the new law a distraction from the country's deeper problems. As smoke lingers in the Hungarian air, on Budapest's bridges and in the parliament, the message from demonstrators is loud and clear.
Engedj át! Engedj át! Engedj át!
Despite increasing restrictions, the LGBTQ+ community and its allies say they will not be silenced. For them, this isn't just about pride. It's about the right to be seen, to be heard, and to exist without fear.
That's First Post America for this Thursday. I'm Eric Ham signing off from our studios here in Washington, D.C. Thanks everyone so much for tuning in.